Mr. Speaker, we're here today to discuss what House Democrats are now calling the America Competes Act. And frankly, it's a shame. It's a shame that they are framing this as a bill about competitiveness. And while it may have started as just that, it's now morphed into another attempt to impose the Democrats' out-of-touch agenda on America. Mr. Speaker, the sad reality is that we are in desperate need of a competitiveness bill. The Chinese Communist Party is trying to overtake us and intends to overtake us as a global leader in science and technology because they know that leadership in science directly equates to a stronger economy, a more secure homeland, and greater influence in the ethical standards that underpin all of our emerging technologies. And so it's no wonder that the Chinese Communist Party is doing everything in its power to take every possible advantage in this global competition. The Chinese Communist Party is outspending us on research and development. They are graduating more STEM students and building a higher tech workforce faster than we are. And they are acquiring valuable research and intellectual property through any means necessary, absolutely including forced acquisition and theft. Mr. Speaker, they're stealing their way to the top. And it is not an exaggeration to say that countering China's global influence must be one of our highest priorities in Congress. The House Science Committee, with Chairwoman Johnson and Ranking Member Lucas's leadership, took on this responsibility, and rightly so, and did what the American people expect us to do. We spent more than a year meeting with stakeholders, gathering feedback, finding consensus policies, and passing bipartisan legislation. In total, with their leadership and with the great work of the Science Committee, we passed a dozen bills to double down on the investment in transformative basic research, build our STEM workforce, and strategically support the most emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum science, and advanced manufacturing. And while those bills you'll hear about today, you'll hear about all of those bills that are in this package, it is inaccurate to say this is a China bill or a competitiveness bill. I want to be crystal clear, this is not bipartisan legislation, and it is not focused on the problems at hand. If the Speaker and our colleagues in the House Democrats were serious about addressing the threat from the Chinese Communist Party, they would have moved our science bill, those dozen bills, into conference months ago. We have been ready to go since June, and everyone who's worked on it on both sides of the aisle knows it. That's when the two core elements of our package passed the House with overwhelming bipartisan support. But instead, this body wasted all summer and fall on massive spending bills like Build Back Better, and now we have little to show for it. And so here we are on Groundhog Day, fittingly, sadly, going through the same exercise we have already done multiple times. And let's be candid. Democrats are trying to cram through a massive bill filled with unnecessary spending that dramatically alters what has passed through this House, instead of focusing on the issues at hand and what started as a bipartisan effort to keep the U.S. globally competitive, somehow in the last few weeks went through the black box of Speaker Pelosi's office and emerged as the Build Back Better backup plan, filled with failed initiatives and progressive demands. And instead of addressing competition and the threat from the communist leadership in China, this bill now corrupts good, solid, bipartisan work I was personally very proud of, and it corrupts it with thousands of pages of irrelevant policies. So what kind of China bill mentions coral reefs more than China? There are very real consequences of this bad faith effort. As much as 85% of America's long-term economic growth is due to advances in science and technology. We cannot take that continued growth for granted. And I can assure you the Chinese Communist Party considers how to outpace us in the technology of the futures. They aren't wasting their time and money on UN climate funds by the way, would send money right back over to Beijing. We should be taking this every bit as seriously as they are. I expect my colleagues, I expect my Republican colleagues will share the countless poison pills that have been inserted into this bill, so I won't elaborate on them here. Instead, I would simply urge my colleagues with a heavy heart to oppose this bill and urge Democratic leadership to get serious about the threat from China. Let's stay focused on that threat. Let's go to conference with a clean, bipartisan competitiveness bill and set our country up for the continued economic success that Americans deserve. Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.